this is part 2 of Get Them and Keep Them Recruitment and Retention Strategies. I'll share with you very briefly what we covered in part 1, which is recorded and available through Together for Choice. But we talked about the big picture of why people leave, what that impact of turnover is to your agency, the bigger impact. And then we focused on recruiting the right staff, things that can be done to improve the hiring process, and strengthening entry-level training. Now, today we have a lot to cover. We're going to cover employment supports, peer support, effective supervision, advancement opportunities, inviting participation and how you can do that, recognizing, rewarding staff, measuring progress, and then I'm also going to cover some resources that will be helpful if you want to dig into any of these topics a little bit more. So before we get into the very first topic that we want to cover, I just want you to keep in mind a few things. One is that in terms of recruitment and retention, there is no number one strategy that if you do this, it's going to fix things. So every provider really needs a toolbox of strategies, multiple things that they're working on to address recruitment and retention. The other thing is that even though from part 1 and part 2 today, I shared last time and will share this time many different strategies that providers are using, all providers are different. And so what works for one and what combination of strategies works for one provider won't necessarily be the perfect combination of strategies that works for you. Now, when you're evaluating your current recruitment and retention strategies, you might be concerned with some of the things that are being proposed here that there's going to be a cost to it, and how do you handle that cost when you're already struggling with existing costs to run the agency? Well, I would encourage everyone to really consider looking at what it truly is costing you for that turnover, financially costing you for turnover, but also costing you in terms of mistakes that can be made, quality of services, satisfaction from individuals that you support and their family members, and how does that impact additional referrals to your agency? How does it impact your ability to maintain any licensing regulations that exist in your state? Look at all of those costs when you're thinking about which strategies to put into place. And then I mentioned this in part 1, and I want to reemphasize it here, is recruitment and retention strategies should be a part of every agency's strategic plan. It should be something that you're always addressing. And then related to that, data is so critical. Data is power. Use it. What gets measured gets improved, and what continues to be measured stays improved. But data just allows you to make good decisions and also to evaluate your decisions and make changes to those decisions. And so, I can't emphasize enough the strategic planning and the using data in this process. So we're going to talk about employment supports, and this quote that I'm going to share with you might seem a little odd, but it says, "Clients do not come first, employees come first. But if you take care of your employees, they will take care of the client." And so a lot of times agencies I see will focus very heavily on client satisfaction, but they don't focus as much on the employees. And it reminds me of some of the instructions when you fly, where they say, if you're flying with young children, make sure you put on the oxygen mask on you before you put it on anybody else. And the first time I ever heard that, I thought, oh, I want to take care of my kids. I want to take care of my kids. But if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your kids. And I see the same thing here with employees and the people that you are there to support that receive services from your agency. If you don't take care of the employees, they're not in the best position to support individuals that receive services from your agency. And so when we're talking about employment supports, the goal is to assist workers in overcoming any obstacles that they would have to success. And a lot of times that can be dealing with any issues such as childcare, transportation, housing, immigration, healthcare. There can be many things that will impact an employee's ability to be a good worker. And if they didn't have these challenges, they could be a very good worker. And so finding ways to make sure that you support them is important. So one of the things that you can do is implement a process for continuous learning about your employees' needs, a way to really know what kind of challenges are people having. If you're hearing that, transportation is an issue, then that's where you may need to focus your attention. If, housing is an issue, providing information and resources in that area, but targeting that to what your employees' needs are. And then once you have a process in place to continuously learn about your employees' needs, then you want to go ahead and cultivate contacts with community agencies that can help meet those employees' needs. A lot of times it is just about providing information, but also letting them know that you're there to support them and you want them to resolve those issues because you recognize them as a good employee and you want them to continue with your agency. Some agencies have hired an on-site counselor or job coach who actually will connect workers with community resources and assist them with job-related questions. Once you decide to focus on supporting employees in this way, the next step would be letting the employees know about those existing supports and services, but then also training your managers, supervisors, and peer mentors, if you have those in your agency, with making referrals when that need arises. And then some employers also support their employees through short-term emergencies. For example, they provide emergency loans, possibly car repair funds, and then other, community resources and community connections. I don't know if any of your agencies do have any type of an emergency fund available, but I would be interested in hearing how many of you are using that now and how that's working for your agency. And so if you want to put a comment into the chat box, I'd be happy to, I'd be really interested to see if that's working for you. Another way to support your employees is through positive reinforcement. And that starts, though, with what kind of an agency are you and evaluating what kind of an agency you are. So I encourage all leadership at various points in time. This is not just a one and done, but at different points in time and different leaders within your organization to walk around the agency and see what people experience when they walk around. Do employees walk by people without saying anything, or is there a common happiness that people are always greeting others? Or do you see people criticizing employees? Do employees clam up when folks walk around? What is it that is going on? And how can you then set the tone? That's a positive tone that you do want in your agency. How can you then set that tone for your agency? And so one way that you can show employees your support that's starting with the leadership is to walk around and start thanking employees for the jobs that they are doing, specifically looking for people who are doing good things and looking for ways to praise them on the things that they are doing. Lots of times, employers will praise folks and they will hold employee appreciation days to give recognition. But when you're doing praise and when you're walking around, you would want to make sure that you can give very specific examples of what it is that you're praising, what it is that you're positively reinforcing. And then another important thing that if you've heard any of my other trainings related to the HCBS settings rule and dignity and respect, it works the same way with the employees. I always encourage that you use people's names. Whenever you use somebody's name and you call them by name, it's totally different experience than it is by just saying, that's a great job, I really appreciate you. When you say, Sarah, that's a really great job, I really appreciate you, it takes on a totally different level of meaning because you're recognizing that person as an individual. And so use names, give specific examples of what people are doing that you want to reinforce. And then also in terms of talking about employee appreciation, many agencies do employee appreciation. What I have found with working with a lot of agencies is they do the same thing over and over and over, and they're not really even sure whether their employees are feeling appreciated by what they're doing. Some of the agencies that I think that are doing a great job with employee appreciation have gone to the employees and found out what it is that makes them feel appreciated. What is it that they like? What incentives would be important to them? And incorporated those things into their agency. You know, I'll give you an example of one agency where I was facilitating a group of employees and asking them about incentives and what's important to them. And one of them brought up, which several other employees then jumped in and said, yes, that was really, really nice, is that they had a hot dog day. Now, for me, I hate hot dogs. I'm like, that would not, I don't know that I'd want to go eat the hot dogs. But what was so important to them is that it was the leader of the organization, the executive director, who personally decided on the hot dog day with ideas from their employees, but the executive director is the one that actually served folks, and they really felt like it was a way of respecting them. And it just surprised me that was, of all the things that the agency was doing, that was one of the things that came up as most often cited by the employees as to what they really liked and wanted to continue. Other things that agencies are doing to support their employees is hiring first-year retention specialists, someone specifically focused on how do we keep these folks. We've got them. We put in recruitment strategies. We got good employees. Now, how do we keep them? But having somebody whose job is focused on that. So it's not just like, great, we got them on board, we're good. But no, we're going to focus on this first year to ensure that we're able to keep you. Within that time period of that first year, scheduling 30, 60, and 90-day touch points to check with them to see how things are going, what's working, what questions they have, making sure that they're feeling part of the agency, that they understand how to do their job. Do they need any additional training? And then the other piece of this is finding out from folks about what makes them stay. So conducting stay interviews instead of just exit interviews. So many times with an exit interview, you talk to someone and you say, well, why are you leaving? But the truth is that a lot of times they don't want to tell you why they're leaving. It could be that they had a problem with their supervisor. It could be that they don't like something that you did in HR or as a CEO of the organization. They don't feel comfortable sharing that information, and they're not going to tell you. Other times they're gone and you don't even have an opportunity to do an exit interview. And so a better approach is that, that you conduct the stay interviews to find out what it is that keeps people here, keeps them working here. And those are the things that you want to make sure that you continue doing, looking for what are themes that you're seeing from one employee to the other. If you focus just on the exit interviews, you're focusing on all the bad things, some of which you can correct, some of which you may not be able to correct, but many times you'll never really know what the truth is anyway. So the next area of peer support next area is peer support, and I want to emphasize that when we talked about doing a strategic plan and that recruitment and retention strategies should be included in your strategic plan, you'll notice that there's 10 different areas that this presentation is broken down into. And so what I would suggest is that you take each one of these sections. So here we have section 5, peer supports, and decide within your agency, is this something that you want to pursue? And then how do you want to pursue that issue? What additional information do you need? Who else do you need to help, coordinate this, make this decision, and attack each one of them in each of these 10 different areas. And so the 10 areas can really be a good guide to kind of help you think through what you want to incorporate into your agency. So in terms of peer support, there's numerous benefits of offering a peer support program. Peer supports can help new hires develop the confidence and skills that they need that will lead to your agency providing really good quality supports and services. It's a good way to support people at any time in their career. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just for new employees, that having peer support can help existing employees, ones that have even been 15, 20 years with their agency, can help them manage stress and resolve challenges within the work that they do. For experienced workers, peer support can be a way to offer career advancement opportunities, which is one of the things that has shown to lead to retention, is having some type of a career ladder. And then peer support really encourages collaboration, learning, and problem solving. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for this industry, especially for agencies that have a lot of home and community-based services where workers are going into individuals' homes. There's that disconnect that they'll have between the work that they do on a day-to-day basis and the agency. But by having the peer support, it provides that stronger connection. But that collaboration, the learning, and most importantly, the problem solving is so important. Problems come up all the time. No matter how seasoned someone is, there's going to be problems, changes that happen. And people don't always want to call the supervisor. They don't always feel comfortable. And so what they do is they do nothing, or they try to solve it on their own. And that isn't always the best answer. But peer support is a way for people to feel that they can talk something out, problem solve something in a very non-threatening way. And so what exactly do peer mentors do? So peer mentors will welcome their new mentees during orientation. Ideally, you would set up a peer mentoring program during the orientation process and get them connected to a peer mentor as soon as possible. The peer mentor works to establish a trusting relationship with their mentee, and they will provide targeted, consistent communication during the first 3 months of that person's being on the job. And they also demonstrate, what does quality look like? What does person-centered supports look like? They demonstrate that in what they do. They can work side by side with their mentees to help that mentee gain confidence and competence in what they're doing. They'll help them develop their communication, problem-solving skills, and continue to offer support, encouragement, and advice throughout the work that they do. In terms of your organization and what you would need to do to kind of think about how you would set this up, based on recommendations from best practice, is that ideally you would provide training to the mentors that, instead of focusing on clinical skills or task-related content, that the training would focus on developing interpersonal skills and leadership skills. That in setting this up, that you would pull together a committee that would be a cross-functional oversight committee to help manage the program, but then you would have one central person that would be a program coordinator to manage this program. And again, I want to remind you, because I know that providers are always worried about, low reimbursement rates, costs of providing services. And so when you think about costs, oh, well, this will be a cost to set this up. I do think that you have to consider those costs. But I also think that you need to think about, how could you do this? And then what would the long-term benefits be? How might it save you costs elsewhere? How might it save you or provide benefits in other ways? And what is the value of those things? And again, each agency needs to evaluate what's going to work best for their organization. In terms of success, I'll share an example with you about one peer mentorship program where the peer mentors did receive training and compensation. They called their mentees twice a week for 12 weeks to ask about their experiences and help them resolve difficulties. They did attend some of the visits that they went with clients to help coach them and to help correct any techniques that they were using in terms of, lifting, communicating, so forth. And the 90-day retention rate for that agency went from 73% to 91% with the use of this mentorship program. So big changes in a short amount of time. Now, the sixth area we're going to talk about is this effective supervision. And, one of the things that I see a lot is that people that were direct support professionals who do a good job will oftentimes be promoted into a supervisor position. Sometimes that works out well, and sometimes it doesn't work out well. When you look at the number one reason that people leave an agency, it's not money. The number one reason across all industries is supervisors. A lot of times, if people love what they do, they wind up staying despite the pay. But what happens is they won't stay even in a job they love if there's a poor supervisor. And so you need to find out who your tough supervisors are and give them training, because it's too hard to get employees. You really don't want to get them and then have a supervisor running them off. And so look at your supervisors, look at, when people are leaving, who they might be working, for. And that doesn't mean you get rid of the supervisor. It just may be that supervisor needs skills and to be better prepared to supervise employees. One of the things that that almost everybody benefits from is communication training, but also training in supervisors in a person-centered coaching style of supervision has been proven to yield better outcomes for folks. And that person-centered style of coaching is really caring about the person, wanting them to do a good job, wanting to help them, as opposed to one that's critical and reprimanding them all the time. Not that people don't need to be corrected on things, but having a mindset of, we value you and appreciate you, and we want to help you grow and be better tomorrow than you are today. And providing the tools shows them that you're interested in them, that you value them, you respect them, and can make those employees want to give even more and make them more committed to your agency. So the coaching style of supervision focuses on the worker's growth at the same time that you're setting high standards for performance and accountability. The benefits of using this type of supervision is better relationships between supervisors and workers, improved problem-solving skills, reduced disciplinary actions, better relationships with clients, a more supportive workplace culture, and less turnover. And so think about, again, when you talk about, okay, how much is it going to cost me to implement something new in my agency? Or how much is it going to cost me to provide this type of training to my supervisors? Well, if you think about, all right, what are the benefits to your agency from improved problem-solving skills? What are the benefits from reduced disciplinary actions and the time that takes of HR? What are the benefits of better relationships with the clients and higher satisfaction? What is the benefit? What are the benefits of less turnover? I had one agency who was sharing with me some of the challenges that they had, and in terms of problem solving was consuming so much time from so many employees in their agency, from multiple leaders to multiple direct support staff, and there was no process in place to try to problem solve it. Well, there was a process. It was a very poor process that involved a lot of people and was not very efficient. And not that you wouldn't want problems to be addressed and have to go through a certain chain of command before a solution's implemented, but if you can get people at the ground level to be thinking about how can we fix this? How can we approach this? As opposed to just reporting a problem and waiting for some decision to come down, but be thinking about solutions and pushing those solutions up for approval in order to implement it. Just a much better approach that way. So the seventh area that we're going to talk about is advancement opportunities. And I have a quote here I want to share, is that all employees need opportunities to learn and grow, or they look elsewhere. You might think that people are just good with what they're doing the same day after day after day after day, but research shows that people do want to learn and grow and change, and that learning and growing helps individuals' self-esteem, helps them function better as an employee. So there's benefits for the individual and benefits for the agency. Two specific strategies for learning and growth. One is specialty training and another is advanced roles. And I'm going to talk about each one of those very quickly. So specialty training will prepare workers to provide a higher level of care. It keeps them interested and engaged in their work. And so, for example, you have general training for all of your direct support staff, direct support workers, but providing very targeted training in things like behavioral health, diabetes, falls prevention, congestive heart failure. And that training can be based on things that you're seeing come up across the agency or things that are coming up with the specific person or people that they support. One of the things that I have also found in terms of why people quit is that they feel incompetent to do their jobs. So sometimes the jobs that direct support workers do is not always easy. A lot of times it's very, very, very difficult. I find that in multiple states, the training requirements, a new person comes on board, we just dump all these requirements on them. It's a lot of information, a lot of rules and regulations. Then they go out and a lot of times they're working without a lot of support from others, and they make mistakes and they get fussed at, and so in many organizations, it's not a very supportive environment for them to feel good about the job. And so when they run into frustrating issues that they don't know how to solve, they're like, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to handle this. And so they can quit for those reasons. But giving them that additional information that empowers them to do a better job and to learn more and know more with that specialty training makes them feel more competent in doing their job. Now, I don't want to get into training in too much detail now. I touched upon it a little bit in part one, but there's so much more that could be said about training. A lot of the training that I see that's offered, even in specialty areas, is very not necessarily practical in terms of, if I'm a direct support worker, what do I go and do tomorrow? How does this help me tomorrow? And so, I'm not covering that topic here today, but just as a little side note, I will encourage you to look at some of the training that you're offering and see, is this high level, information that doesn't make doesn't really help them do anything different with how they support a person, or is it just nice to know information, or it's good to know, what can you give them in terms of training that really helps them feel more competent to support a person better. In terms of, so specialty training is one way, advanced roles is another, and there's a couple of different ways that people can have advanced roles. One is senior aide. So having somebody that is a senior direct support worker or direct support professional, those folks can be available to provide on-the-job coaching, similar to a peer support, but it's just who's senior that you can go to. It can be anyone, whereas peer supports, you're pairing people together. So with senior aide, anybody that has been designated as a senior aide that a new person can go to for on-the-job coaching, problem-solving support, and the senior aides can also be a resource to interdisciplinary teams. And then the peer mentors that we talked about. And then the other is assistant trainers. And I find that, a lot of the valuable information that I have learned with working with different provider agencies is by talking to the direct support staff. The ones that have been there a while really know the people that they support, and they have expertise that can be so valuable when shared with others. And so, trying to identify those folks and pulling them into trainings that are currently being done is a way to give them an advanced role, to value what they know or what they've learned over the years that they've been working in this field, and a way for new employees that are going through training to see the knowledge and experience of some of the people that are working at the agency, to see more of the breadth of that. And here's an example of a successful advanced role situation where there was an advanced role project that was implemented. This was back about 10 years ago in New York with New York's Department of Health. And the senior aides provided coaching and support for workers. They served on this interdisciplinary team. And in terms of results, they noticed improvements in job satisfaction, inclusion in the support team, relationships with the individuals and their families, and communications with related clinical staff that were involved. And so there was numerous benefits that they found by providing these advanced roles. So the 8th area that we're going to cover is inviting participation. I love quotes if you haven't figured it out. I feel like it's like just a nugget of great information in a few words. But employees who have a meaningful say are more likely to stay. And that is true if you think about some of the situations that you've been in, employment situations. I don't know if you've had any bad experiences where you felt like you didn't have a say, versus places where you felt like you do have a say. And, you know, I can speak for myself for sure, but I'm hoping you'll think about this, is that, you know, I don't want to stay someplace that where what I have to say isn't appreciated or valued, because my thoughts are, well, let me go where I am needed, you know. And so you know, think about, you know, what are the opportunities that we give to the support staff or all staff in having a meaningful say in what's happening with the agency. There's a couple of different strategies that have been used to invite people to participate and have a say. One is cross-functional teams, and the other is learning circles. And I'll touch upon each of those briefly. So the cross-functional teams is where you pull together employees that represent different roles and different departments, and they work together to identify different challenges and create solutions and action plans. So, for example, you could pull together a cross-functional team on scheduling, assignments, workload balancing. You could pull together a cross-functional team on quality improvement or support planning in general and processes. And you can pull together a cross-functional team on employee retention. All of these would be great opportunities to pull together cross-functional teams. Now, you might be thinking, well, we do have teams that talk about those things. What I see a lot of is teams that are pulled together, and it's mostly leadership, mostly the high-level leadership. But when you're looking at a cross-functional team, you really want to have people at all kinds of roles within the organization, because you just never know what perspective they're going to bring to the table that's going to be very valuable. And everybody has different perspectives. So they are going to bring something to the table. They are going to bring that perspective to the table. And that when you have that full perspective is when you're going to be able to come up with the best path forward. The other way to invite participation as a way to encourage people to have a meaningful say so that they will stay is to implement a culture where you support learning circles. And so the purpose of a learning circle is to collaboratively address a specific and usually a short-term issue or concern. Whereas when you're talking about the cross-functional teams, that's for something that's really bigger, that you're going to have more of an action plan that you want to develop and then implement. The learning circle, short-term, very specific. With a learning circle, once you set up this as part of your culture and your expectations and a way of operating within your organization, any staff member should be able to convene a learning circle at any point in time. So just to give you an example, in a large community home, workers on the same weekend shift might come together for a 15-minute learning circle to discuss a staffing shortage, after one of the team members has like called in and is not going to be able to be there. And then that learning circle would develop strategies for helping each other through that specific shift. Now, you might be doing that somewhat now. What is really nice about promoting learning circles is that it really emphasizes to your employees that all of your input is valued and appreciated as teams. And you can have a temporary team that's just for a shift. But you're encouraging that teamwork in the problem solving. You're giving people an opportunity to have a say, as opposed to maybe when somebody calls out and is not going to be able to be there, and there's a leader that then says, all right, we're going to need to do this, and then dictates to everyone else, here's what we need to do. It's just a way of pulling people together and helping them band together. And when you start having people band together within your organization, they do feel more connected and more part of that organization or that team. So when we talk about inviting participation, there's so many. I mentioned two ways that you can do that through the cross-functional teams and learning circles, but there's so many ways that you can invite participation and make people feel valued and appreciated and part of the network of problem solving for your agency. But it's really important to make this part of the culture of your organization, and you can do that by starting and sharing information during orientation. People need to know this is the way that you operate, and you can demonstrate it during orientation, which it's not about just saying this is the way we operate, but it's by doing things and showing them, well, here's how we operate. And so orientation is a key opportunity to not only prepare people for their new roles, but to set the tone for their engagement with your organization overall, and the fact that you encourage their participation even when they are brand new. By doing this at orientation, one of the benefits is that sometimes you have new employees who want to hold back when they're invited to a group. They feel like, well, I'm new, I'm not as experienced, I'm going to wait and listen to what everybody else says, and I'm just going to follow along. But you don't want your employees to function that way. You want them to step up and to be part of that team and be proactive in looking at how to make things better, how to solve problems. And so during the orientation process, you can encourage and invite participation by not just sharing your mission, vision, and values, but discussing it. It's not just reciting it, here's what it is, but discuss it. What do you think about that? What does that mean to you? Have that discussion around that topic. You can talk through key organizational policies and procedures, not just telling them, but discussing it, asking, how are things in other agencies that they work for? How is this different? What do they like about it? Are there any concerns that they have? Build shared understanding about the populations that your organization serves and discussing that, facilitating activities that help new employees build relationships with coworkers and clients and families. And then you can also work with new hires to assess their knowledge and their confidence and their ability to identify areas in need for further support or skill development. And so, getting them to be able to speak up and feel comfortable speaking up of what do you feel like you're good at based on the things that we've talked about? Where could we offer additional support and training for you? What would be helpful to you? And, sometimes when I do presentations, there's so much other information that I want to just feed into that. And I got to watch myself sometimes. But there was a really fascinating study that was done years ago. I'm trying to remember who did the study, but it was done by a consulting firm for CMS about training of DSPs. And this must have been like 15, 20 years ago. But one of the things that they found is that in terms of training, that there was higher satisfaction from the client and the employee when you asked both the client and the employee what training was needed in order for that employee to support that person. And so when that person had a voice in that of, I really need training in this area, and when the person that was being supported said, I want my support staff to be trained in this, this, and this. And when that was followed through with, that it led to much higher satisfaction on the part of the individual and by the employee, and increased in an increase in the quality of the services that were provided. So the ninth area is recognizing and rewarding staff. And so, you know, we talk about a lot of times about a living wage, better benefits, are two essential elements that can boost recruitment and retention, but wages and benefits, those are just one piece of the puzzle. And so even when agencies are operating on tight margins, they can show appreciation for their workers in a variety of ways. And there is research that shows that these gestures absolutely make a difference. However, I have seen problems where what they were doing was not thought out and wasn't providing the results that they anticipated. But companies with a recognition-rich culture experience 31% lower turnover rate than their peers. And 80% of employees report that recognition is an important driver in their job performance. But there's many different ways to show someone or to say that they're doing a good job and to thank them for the job that they do. So some of the things that you could do specifically, there's 4 tips for showing appreciation. One is recognizing staff for specific actions or outcomes, which I briefly mentioned earlier. You know, it's not just about being a great worker. You don't want to just highlight, you know, you want to make sure you highlight the specific actions to help your staff understand exactly why you're recognizing them, which in turn reinforces your organization's mission and quality standards. The other is implementing a formal recognition program that you can monitor and improve as needed. And that's the key piece, is that people have gotten in the habit of having a formal program on a regular basis, but they're really not monitoring it and improving it. And it may have been started years ago and done in a way that the employees sometimes may feel that it's more of a nuisance to participate in it than anything that's showing them that you value and appreciate them. Another way of recognizing and rewarding staff is to encourage peer-to-peer recognition. So you don't want to reward workers just from the top down only. You want to allow anyone in the organization an opportunity to recognize anyone else, you know, in an appropriate way. And then the fourth is to share employee recognition widely. So you really want to repeat success stories through newsletters, social media are 2 examples. And this way your high performing employees can, you know, they can reap wider recognition. And then more employees learn what it actually means to be successful on the job. So, you know, mentioning at one time of somebody did something great at one event is fine for the people that attended that event, but you really want to share positive things with as many people and share it multiple times so that people see this is you know, the model to, or this is what you want them to model after. So the last area that we're going to cover, and then we'll go into the resources, is measuring progress. And I am a strong, you know, my doctoral degree is actually in research, but all my research was done in the disability field. But measuring progress, and I really do believe in the power of data. I also believe in we waste a lot of time collecting meaningless data, sometimes because we're required to by different state agencies. But if used appropriately, good data can really help ensure that a little bit of your investment goes a long way by measuring your progress. And so in terms of doing that, and we're focusing specifically on recruitment and retention, is you could start by establishing recruitment targets if you don't already have these in place. So recruitment targets can be things such as the percentage of candidates who call back after an information session, the percentage of candidates who come to a job interview, the percent that accept a job offer, the percent that arrive for orientation, the percent that complete the onboarding process, and or the percent that pass the 90-day probation period. So what you want to do is you want to look at, all right, well, what is that percent? And where do you feel like your agency is maybe missing the mark the most, and focus your energy on that area specifically. But you can't do that unless you have the data, unless you're collecting the data and evaluating that data. So you want to really compare retention rates, turnover, employee and client satisfaction, and other quality indicators before and after your organization implements some type of new retention strategy. So, for example, you can measure the impact of adding enhanced employment supports. But again, you want to make sure you have measurements for retention rates, turnover, employee and client satisfaction, and so forth before you implement that enhanced employment supports, and then measure it again afterwards to see whether or not that's making a difference. Same thing with a peer mentorship program if you implement one of those, delivering new specialty training modules, or creating advanced roles. Whatever it is that you're doing, either on the recruitment side or the retention side, you really want to take those measurements first, then implement something, and then measure so that you can then make appropriate adjustments after that. It's very important in the process of collecting information and collecting data is to seek feedback directly from staff and collect it from all employees. What are the new employees and what are their experiences? What are the experienced employees and what are their experiences? And also those who are planning on leaving. You want to know what were their experiences about hiring, onboarding, and their experiences as an employee in the day-to-day operations of your agency. And then in terms of how you get feedback, you can do individual interviews where you can get a lot of rich, in-depth details. You can do focus groups that give you a little bit of a wider perspective. You could also do surveys that capture input from the broadest range of employees. Depending on which methods you put into place, I would say would really depend on how big of an issue it is for your agency as to how detailed you want to get in terms of the interviews versus focus groups versus surveys. And then all of these things that we've talked about, they do take time, but it does pay off. And here's a really good quote that says, employees are a company's greatest asset. They're your competitive advantage. You want to attract and retain the best, provide them with encouragement, stimulus, and make them feel that they're an integral part of your company's mission. And a lot of this falls on the shoulders of human resources. And this is another really good quote. Human resources isn't a thing that we do. It is the thing that runs our business. Without the support staff that you have, you don't have an agency, a business. You cannot do what you need to do unless you have a solid team of people to help you do that. And it's very interesting. I was talking with a provider one time about that the provider was exploring some software to help with progress notes and help the direct support staff in the field, but they didn't want to make any changes because they had just taken on a new HR software, and I don't want to go into too many details, but what was so interesting is that they had spent so much time and money investing in a HR software that captured the client records, but they weren't focused on what would help and it helped a few people in the office to have that system, but it didn't help all of the people that they depended upon to provide the supports directly to individuals. And it kind of just threw me off a little bit because of how much they'd invested in that. And I thought, you're not in the business for, just paying people. You're in the business of supporting them. That is part of your human resources department, is to support them, to be the best employees and to do the work they need to do. And so in terms of, okay, this is a lot of information. The problem is so big. I do encourage people to start today, again, with strategic planning, using the 10 items as get with folks in your agency and think through each of these. Think about, you could do a quick meeting to say, here's where we're strong, here's where we want to focus some attention now. Not everything has to be done all at the same time, but everything that you do will help you move forward in a positive way. It's how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? It doesn't have to be eaten all at one time, but start today. First step can be meeting with others in your organization to go through these 10 steps and have a discussion about where do you want to focus, making the decision to do a strategic plan, and to start tackling the issue in a very strategic and intentional way. As you move forward, there are several resources that I want to share with you, and I've included the links here, and I will share this PowerPoint with Together for Choice so that they can disseminate it to all of you. One thing that I strongly recommend, if you haven't read it already, there's a book called Heart, Hope, and Honesty, How IDD Providers Can Attract and Retain Amazing Direct Support Professionals and Thrive Despite the DSP Crisis. There's the site for that is Blitz Creative. They are wonderful consultants that can not only provide a much more in-depth training for your employees, but they actually, their trainings will walk your agency through specific actions to strategically address, what is your website and how's that work for recruiting employees? How does that show your brand? And walking you through some of those specific things. They have a DSP Magnet Academy also with different types of workshops. You can go on their website and see what they have to offer. And even though I'm not providing at this point direct support, I'm not running an agency or anything like that, I have sat through their trainings several times along with other providers and have found them to be very interesting, very informative. And what I really like about what they do is at the end of the training, you walk away with something that you can actually start implementing right away. It's nice to go to hear a training and this is all great ideas, love it, I believe it, yay. But if you can't go back to your agency and do something different tomorrow, if it just goes and gets stuck in a drawer, it's not very helpful. With this particular group, they're really good at helping you come up with action steps of things that you need to do to move forward. And the book is a really great read. Other resources is Anchor does have the DSP toolkit that is listed on their website, and I have the address here as well. In there, they include a realistic job preview, which is really helpful in helping people understand, public service announcements, recruiting flyers, interviewing resources, and they also have a DSP turnover calculator that you can use to calculate what your turnover is. So another really good resources. Also, there is the Administration on Community, I realize I'm missing a word, Living, Direct Care Workforce Strategy Center, which was created in 2022 with the purpose of providing technical assistance to states and service providers. And their goal is to implement recruitment, retention, training, and professional development of members of the direct care workforce. They recently announced the launching of the Strategy Center's clearinghouse of resources and promising practices, and I have the link for that here as well. And so they have some good information now, but I do anticipate that they will be continuing to add information. So it'd be something that'd be good to go back to every now and then and see what kind of studies are being done, what are they learning, what are other effective strategies, and so forth. And then a couple of other resources. There is the 12 Steps for Creating a Culture of Retention, which is a workbook for home and community-based long-term care providers. This was something that was developed by PHI National, and the link is here. And then the National Direct Care Workforce Resource Center, which is also operated through PHI National, has an online database of resources. And so that's all the information that I have today. We have just a few minutes for questions. And I know that we had some questions last time that I was not able to prepare anything for today, but I will prepare that information and share it through Together for Choice that they can share with you through email to give you that feedback.